Our goal in Reading the Giver in grades 7 through 12 was to promote a love for reading and build community and conversation through a common novel. The Giver was the perfect text because there are so many relevant themes, cross-curricular connections, and different levels of meaning for different age groups.
All right, when we read The Giver, we really focused on imperfections in society. We talked about how removing feelings for other people would really change the way that their lives are. And the kids really seemed to get into that. And we did a couple of debates where some students said that removing feelings would be a good thing, whereas other students argued that it would be a really bad thing because then they're not feeling love or hatred or being able to choose somebody that they would want to date. And overall, the kids really had a good time with The Giver, and I can't wait to do it again next year.
After we read The Giver, we had to do a paper, and my topic was drugs. And so I talked about how drugs in our world would hurt people if they took too much of it, and drugs in their society would get rid of their emotions and stuff for people. So yeah, it's true.
We did a argument on The Giver of, we did sides on The Giver, and it was about if The Giver was a perfect society and if it wasn't. And I really liked when we were arguing and saying if it wasn't, and we went to different sides of the rooms.
Really enjoyed the Giver unit this year. We focused on the utopian society element, how a utopia becomes a dystopia. After the kids read the story, they were able to create in their own groups their own utopian society, and they really enjoyed it. They loved the freedom that they had every day, and the instruction pretty much drove itself. It was a lot like a Socratic seminar, so every day the kids would come in excited. One student even planned to be out that day for an orthodontist appointment. She joined her group via Skype because she didn't want to miss the lesson. She was so engaged. So the students created their own utopian societies and were able to present these societies to their fellow classmates, as well as give a persuasive speech based on what you should do in that society and why you should follow the rules. And they absolutely loved it. So I think all in all it was really successful. At the end too, they were able to take a good deep look at their own utopian societies and how they become dystopias. So very effective.
The ninth graders started the year off with The Giver by Lois Lowry. We had a really great time doing it and integrated a lot of it with global content. We looked at how The Giver relates to the characteristics of classical civilizations, and then began to analyze The Giver as if it were its own classical civilization. The kids really enjoyed it. They were able to see it as not only a text that was really interesting to them, but also as a dystopian warning text, and they were able to analyze that appropriately.
10th grade English, we focused heavily on the idea of conformity and sameness in Jonas's community. We started by first defining what conformity is and looking at Jonas's community and how everybody was the same and where people were allowed to be different. After we looked at Jonas's community at the beginning of the book, we started reading articles that related to our society and how we conform or how we break away. We looked at experiments like the Milgram study and the Asch experiment and saw how people who are normally good people might become bad or evil in some sense by like shocking other people or agreeing to something that they know is wrong. After we did that, which the students really enjoyed those experiments, we started looking at the book again and at the rules and how once Jonas got the memories, it was much more difficult for him to stay the same. After that, we did a final assignment in which the students needed to answer the question, how does the absence of memory make it easier for the community members to adhere to sameness and conform to the rules of this society?
Studied The Giver, and we studied the society and roles created within The Giver. During this time, Mrs. Cook acted as the giver, and she then relayed information to me, the receiver, and I had to relay that information to the rest of my English class in order to complete a series of tasks within the project that we did.
Grade honors students were able to take The Giver and compare it to A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley and 1984 by George Orwell, and all three of those are dystopian pieces of literature. So they actually also tied in one more independent reading novel of their choice that fell in the dystopian category, and they set up a comparative piece in which they looked at all of the elements of what makes a dystopian piece of literature, and they did a comparative essay between all four of those books. So it was an interesting way to look at The Giver and an interesting take to compare what happens in Jonas's community to what happens in 1984 and A Brave New World.
Comp 101, I did a comparative essay of The Handmaid's Tale, Brave New World, and The Giver. And I focused on how government controls society and mainly how women are treated differently within those societies.
In 11th and 12th grade English, while we were studying The Giver, we studied specifically the role of questioning authority and whether or not authority can make wise decisions for everyone. We also discussed the significance of euphemisms to an extensive role, but we focused mostly on authority. Each group presented about authority and how they feel authority makes decisions and what kind of authority can make wise decisions for everyone.